Hi, I'm Mandy,
And I'm Ben,
and this is Behind the Visa Window with ex-visa officers.
where we give the insider's perspective on the US visa interview process.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Behind the Visa Window with Mandy and Ben. This week, we're going to talk about something that has been plaguing a lot of students, international students, who have already been in the United States on an F1 visa, but something sort of happened to them on this visa journey. And we're going to talk about the issue of OPT problems. OPT problems when you come over on an F1 visa, you're looking for that internship that will hopefully, help you launch your career in the United States. And perhaps, working with companies that they didn't realize, had ill intentions for the students.
Oh yeah, OPT fraud is become a big thing. The accusation of OPT fraud for students that are like at the top of the academic game. They went to top tier universities. They then got internships with a couple different universities. One of them turned out to be one of these illegitimate OPT providers, and then they've got an H-1B working for Google or Microsoft or any number of top Fortune 500 companies in the U.S. And then it becomes a problem that they've got this one company in their background that was committing fraud. The company was committing fraud. Now, that's not to say that the visa applicant was committing fraud, right, Mandy?
Right, absolutely. It becomes a little bit complicated because I think from the international students' perspective, it's really a strange situation because they come to the United States, they're paying a lot of money for tuition, they're paying for classes and books and all of these things. And basically, what this group of companies have decided to do is to take advantage of certain international students and get them to sign up for an internship that doesn't really exist, but have them pay for something called OPT training. So we have these companies that are saying, hey, if you pay us a couple $100s for training, then we will make sure that you have a contract with our company. We are going to basically hire you for projects for other companies. We just kind of have to wait for these projects to roll in. But in the meantime, you need to take some classes on, bioinformatics, or you need to take classes on, coding or whatever it is. And all of this can be done online. It's just a couple $100s. And for students, this seems like a great deal.
Yeah, and it has the entire appearance of legitimacy, right? These companies have an established presence. A lot of times, they've been operating for years and years, and so there's generations of students who graduating students could look to and say, oh, well, these seniors of mine have done this, and so I can do this. I can do this too. This is a good path to OPT, to then having time in the U.S. to look for different jobs, different opportunities, find a company that'll sponsor my H-1B. These companies have EINs, employer identification numbers. They're the employer's tax number. They have an e-verify presence, which is what's required by the U.S. government for students to be able to get an OPT position with a company. They have to be in the e-verify system, and all of these companies were in the e-verify system, right? They weren't advertising, "Hey, we're fraudulent," right? They were advertising that we're an OPT company and we can give you an internship. We can give you experience that's going to benefit you in your career, right? We're going to give you an in into the industry in America that you're trying to get your, an employment visa with in the future. And so a lot of these students were victims of the fraud of these companies, right? The students were not complicit in this. The students were victims of these companies that then didn't actually give them any work to do, didn't get them a placement at a third party as a contractor during their OPT period, right? The students were let down by these companies in the same way that the US government was defrauded by these companies who weren't actually abiding by the regulations that a company should be.
That's right, Ben. And it's just really sad because, it ends up being the students that end up having to, pay for this lesson, because their visas ended up being revoked by the State Department and by CBP. And I think this was in 2018, but there was something like 5 or 6 thousand Indian national students working for companies like Integra Technologies or AZ Tech Technologies, where the State Department and CBP in conjunction later found that there was a pattern of fraud where these companies were asking students to pay the company for pre-employment training and then give them an EAD card or an offer letter, and then an EAD card. And students fell for it. And in fact, a couple of the students who came to Argo for assistance on their OPT, visa issues, these companies were still listed as legitimate OPT employers, even on their university's websites. And this is even after it came out that, hey, there's a problem with these companies. Schools are still, keeping these companies on their OPT lists, and students actively use these lists when starting their job search. And so I think this is really problematic, and it's really unfortunate that it ends up being students who end up being responsible and paying for it with, a visa revocation and this career and education, that they gained in the United States, that they're starting out, they're some of the best and brightest students around the world. And yet all of a sudden, everything they have built basically, disappears because they're no longer welcome in the United States. The government is telling them, hey, we're revoking your visa. You have to go back to your home country. So then, everything that they've been doing for the last 4, 5, 6 years suddenly is just gone, and it's devastating for the students.
Yeah. What really bugs me about it is that they're being treated as if they have defrauded the immigration system in some way, but they haven't. Defrauded to what end, right? They've gained no benefit through this, right? They didn't get experience working at a company. They didn't get paid. They weren't employed. They were unemployed in the US after their studies, right? So usually visa officers are mostly concerned with stopping unauthorized employment. They don't want to give an F visa or a B1, B2 visa to someone who they think is going to get to the US and then engage in employment while they're there. These are students who did not engage in employment after their program was done, right? So they've done the opposite of what the visa officers are normally concerned about. They've actually not worked, yet they're being accused of defrauding the immigration system, when really they were the ones that weren't given the benefit that they lawfully were able to receive. They have employment authorization, but they couldn't be given work. They weren't given work. They weren't paid. They didn't take any benefit from it. So that just really bugs me that it's being misinterpreted like that. And simply getting to, advice that we can give people who are in this situation. First of all, if you did OPT, if you're listening to this and you did OPT in the US, do a search of the companies that you ever applied to or were registered with through your DSO. Do a search of the company name and fraud, and see if they were busted by ICE or DHS for fraud, for OPT fraud. Many students don't know that this happened until they get into their visa interview, and then they're accused of fraud, and they had no idea that this was the case, right? Some of these companies operated under different names. So some of the big names in the headlines might not have caught your attention, but they had different operating names that will be listed in some of these articles. Do a search, make sure, if you have any doubts, whether or not you were connected with one of these companies. And if you were, the burden is heavily upon you the next time that you have any interaction with an immigration official, be it for a new visa, be it at the border. You're going to have to prove to their satisfaction that you were not complicit in the fraud that these companies were committing, right? There's no guarantee that the officer you interact with will have a lot of knowledge about this. This may be the first time that they're opening up some case that has a hit like this, and they're going to see, oh, well, there's some fraud here. They don't have the background. You're going to have to give them the background on this. You're going to have to give them the entire story of how you came to find this company, what you thought you were going to be doing with them, how long it was before you weren't associated with that company anymore. Now, everyone's situation is different, right, Mandy? We've had a lot of students that have, some were with these companies for about a month before they moved on to another internship. Some were with them for much longer. And so everybody's going to have a different situation that's going to require a different method to explain to the visa officer or the immigration officer, like, what was going on, what was your thinking, but it's about creating that connection and letting them see what your thought process was, letting them see that there was no reason for you to commit any fraud because you didn't gain any benefit through it. That's going to be key to being able to get your visa and also avoiding a permanent ban on entering the US or getting a new visa.
That's right, Ben. And I feel like, you have such a good point where for a lot of these students, for a lot of you who are, listening to this podcast and finding us on YouTube, this might have been something that happened to you years ago. You might not even remember this first weird internship that you took for a month. And then all of a sudden, and this is what has happened to a lot of our clients, the company representative or recruiter stopped responding to your emails or stopped returning your phone calls. And you were like, wow, that was very strange. I'm going to go ahead and, go work for Google now or go work for Netflix. And you get a great job and the company ends up petitioning for you for an H-1B visa because, they think you're a great employee. And then all of a sudden, one day, you might just get an email, probably the scariest email you'll ever get from the State Department that says, hey, your visa has been revoked because of this thing that happened years ago. So keep in mind that this could be as recent as, a year ago. It might still be going on right now for all we know, or it could be something that happened 5 years ago. So make sure that you're staying ahead of it and knowing that you could be facing a very intense interview at the US Embassy or consulate, your next one, and get ahead of it by preparing and knowing, how you want to respond to the consular officer, thinking through, trying to recall what happened at the time, knowing all of your facts, having all of the paperwork that you had at the time ready. And this is going to be a tough interview. It's going to be very different than the first interview that you had with the embassy or the consulate that might have just been a couple minutes. This is likely to be something that's 10 minutes, 15 minutes longer. Possibly they might call you in for a second or third interview to get more details from you on what happened because they want to understand your role in the situation, whether or not you were complicit. And it's just really unfortunate because so for so many of these international students, even just going through the H-1B process is difficult as it is. You have to win the lottery. You have to get an employer who has liked you enough to be willing to petition for you for an H-1B visa. And none of that is easy in the United States. But to have your chances of, starting a great career in the United States sort of undermined because of the role that these companies played, years ago by, taking $200 from an international student. I mean, to me, that just feels really unfair. And my heart really goes out to students in this situation because it is terrifying. And unfortunately, there's not really a lot that immigration attorneys can do for you because immigration attorneys, they're very well versed in working with USCIS, drafting petitions, submitting the paperwork that is necessary, responding to RFEs, these things. But, when you're going overseas for a visa interview, the only person who's going to be at that window is you and the consular officer. And you have to understand how a consular officer thinks, how they like information being presented to them. How are you able to effectively engage with them without being pushy or without, just going in there and saying, hey, it wasn't my fault. I didn't know anything. That's not a good way to do things. And really, I feel like our team of experts at Argo, we're all former visa officers. We've all made tons of decisions just like these, difficult decisions. We can help you strategize how you can make sure that your voice is heard and what happened to you is heard.
I want to make sure people also know, because I know that we've had a few clients that have come to us after having gotten bad advice from so-called visa agents, visa experts, these so-called self-purported visa experts out there who give people bad advice that they wouldn't take on their own, right? There was someone that I was working with who told me that he went in for his visa interview, and when they asked him about his OPT, because he'd been prepared by by an outside visa agent. He didn't tell the truth about the nature of this OPT experience. And he said that he'd been working there. He said, yeah, I had these jobs, they gave me work to do. Well, that was the lie. And while he didn't commit any fraud in the initial OPT experience, he did commit fraud when he lied to the consular officer. And the consular officers know that these companies gave no work to anybody, right? They know that no one was getting any work from these companies. And so someone then claiming to get that work, what happens? Well, then they say, oh, well, give me those pay stubs. Give me the communications about that job. Let's see the evidence that you actually had that work. He didn't have that evidence, obviously. And so it turned out that they hit him pretty hard with a refusal and then some, because he had gotten poor advice from somebody who wasn't a visa expert, right? You've got to use your judgment and decide who to trust, right? There are some people out there who you know that they've never worked inside a consulate, inside an embassy. They're not even U.S. immigration attorneys, and they're trying to give advice. They're predatory, and they are taking advantage of you as a visa applicant. You can on our website, you can go on and you can see our consular commissions signed by the president, right? You can see our diplomatic commissions signed by the president and the Secretary of State. We were actually visa officers and U.S. diplomats inside the U.S. embassies and U.S. consulates where these decisions are made. We were doing this job. With us, I think one of the greatest things that we can give our clients, Mandy, is the peace of mind of knowing that they've finally gotten an authoritative take on their case. Whereas before, they're just kind of looking around on the internet, asking friends, getting advice from these outside visa agents, and not knowing who to really trust.
Absolutely. And not to toot our own horn, but I feel like we've helped a number of students in this specific situation, in these OPT related, fraud issues. They've gotten visa revocation emails, and we have helped them to great success to be able to honestly and effectively tell their story to the visa officer. And in fact, we had a client recently that went into the U.S. consulate in Mumbai in India. And because he prepared with one of our Argo officers ahead of time, he was calm, he was collected, he was confident. He wasn't, terrified because he had gotten that visa revocation email, which, if it were me, I would be terrified. But he knew, what he wanted to say and how he wanted to say it with our assistance. And he actually came out of that interview with his visa approved. This is specifically to his situation, but he got his visa approved. And he had the consulate actually telling him, okay, we're going to make sure that there's no other issues that you're going to run into going back to the United States. We're so sorry that you went through this. And this is just a testament of the value that we provide with our clients in making sure that, they can tell what happened and not be scared to be honest, because again, the students are the victims in this situation. They're not the people perpetrating the fraud. They did not come up with a scheme to make money off of, a couple $100s off of international students. This is entirely borne by these companies.
Oh yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, that's just not how the visa officers and immigration officers are interpreting it 100% of the time. And we have to be honest, we've been able to help some people. We haven't been able to help everybody. It's a tough situation to be in, but I do know 100% with 100% confidence that your chances are as good as they possibly can be when you've prepared with us. We always harp on, documents not being the most important thing. And in this case, it is that still holds. The documents aren't the most important part, because you have to be able to create empathy and create rapport with the visa officer. When you're in that interview, they have to want to help you, right? Because they're going to have to do extra work in order to give you your visa. There's derogatory information in their system related to you, and they can't just say, okay, issue the visa. They're going to have to go through and they're going to have to take some other administrative steps. They're going to need some extra information from you. They're going to have to put in extra work, and they have to want to do that. They have to want to do it. It's not just as simple as they like you. They want to feel like they're doing the just right thing, right? So you have to prove to them that it's the just and right thing for them to do extra work on your behalf to help clear your name and get you your visa again, right? Now, on top of that, you still need the documents, right? Because in this case, it's different than a normal case. You're going to want to go in there and convince them with your conversation with them that you merit their extra effort in order to get your visa and to clear your name. But then you also need all the documents. You're going to need all the documentary evidence that shows what you were doing during that time, your correspondence with this company, the receipt from your credit card for how much you paid this company, right? I even recommend that people have a summary of your entire situation and your argument, less than a page, 3/4 of a page, written in your own voice, that you can give to them so that when they're reviewing this case, putting in this extra work later, maybe they haven't made a decision yet. They're going to remember you because they've got that account of what happened written down in your own voice. That's going to remind them of who you were as a human at your visa interview, rather than just, okay, well, I've got a bank statement here and some impersonal emails, or a brief written by an attorney, which is written in legalese, which doesn't trigger any type of humanitarian response in them at all.
Absolutely. And one thing I also want to mention, if you're an immigration attorney and you're listening to our podcast, we regularly work with immigration attorneys to make sure that your clients have the best experience. They have, the best legal advice that they can get from you, and the best paperwork they can get from you. But now you're releasing them, to their consular processing interview. They're going in for that visa stamp, what immigration attorneys call the visa interview, and you're not sure what they're going to say, and you're worried about it. We can make sure that your clients are the most prepared possible for, just your average visa interview, but especially for ones that are tougher and have more complications, like these OPT visa issues. So, get in touch with us if you're an immigration attorney and you want that level of experience for your clients so that they can feel prepared and know that they've been prepped by the best.
Yeah, I was actually speaking to an immigration attorney the other day, and I had recommended, a 3/4 page written in a personal voice introductory letter for a client. And she said, no, my briefs are quite short. I keep them around 10 pages. So it's not that much for the consular officer to read. What do you think about that, Mandy?
10 pages. That's no consular officer is going to
No.
read that. Sorry to this immigration attorney. I know,
Yeah.
Immigration attorneys do their best and they really, put their heart and soul into these memos. But what we can do is make sure that it's effective for the consular officer, because I think at the end of the day, it's not about how many pages are in the memo. It's that we want the consular officer to take the right action to help your clients and to make sure that they get the best possible result.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have to catch their attention quickly. They're moving fast. They got that time pressure on them, that their managers are putting on them. They have to move fast. And so something that's quick catches their attention, creates an empathetic response, and gives them, laid out very easily, the reasons right there where they see them all at once. Oh, this is how I could type this in verbatim as my justification for issuing this visa, right? Making their job easy. Make their job easy, and it's easier to get what you want from them.
Absolutely. And it helps everybody, honestly.
Well, if anybody has one of these OPT cases, I hope that you'll reach out to us and we can help you with it. And, obviously keeping your details, your personal details private. We can even talk about it on the next podcast. Send us an email to hello@argovisa.com, hello@argovisa.com. And let us know the details, let us know the situation that you're in, and we can talk about your case. We can even get in touch with you personally and set up a consultation with you to try to find the best path forward for you.
Absolutely. We're here to help. So if you're in this situation, don't be scared. There could be options. We want to help. So again, get in touch with us, hello@argovisa.com, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Great. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone.